Imagine being handcuffed in your own garage by men who weren't even real cops. That's exactly what happened to me the night four strangers in black vests, stamped with cheap white letters reading HOA Cop, stormed through my side door as if they owned the place. They didn't knock, they didn't identify themselves properly, and they sure as hell didn't have authority. Before I could even react, cold steel clamped around my wrists. My arms wrenched behind me while one of them shoved me against my workbench hard enough that tools rattled from the pegboard and clanged to the floor. Their leader leaned close, smirking like he was judge, jury, and executioner, and barked, "You're being detained under Cedar Ridge Bylaws, Section 14. His tone made it sound official, but it was nonsense. They weren't cops. They weren't even security. They were Patricia Moreland's hired muscle, sent to silence the one resident who had dared to expose her HOA scam. From the first day I moved into Cedar Ridge, Patricia hated me. She wanted obedience and silence, people who signed checks and never asked questions. But I wasn't that neighbor. I called out her bogus citations, told residents they didn't have to pay a dime because her so-called bylaws wouldn't hold up in real court. Word spread, and suddenly her intimidation stopped working. People pushed back. Appeals were filed. Residents refused to cave. And in Patricia's eyes, I became the problem. Her harassment escalated. Fake violations for everything from garage door color to lawn edging, threatening notes taped to my door, even strangers in dark SUVs idling near my house to rattle me. But nothing prepared me for that night when her private HOA cops went too far. Pinned against my own bench, I felt their arrogance thick in the air. One barked orders to search my house, another rifled through drawers while the leader pressed down on my shoulder as if I were a criminal. They thought cuffs meant I was helpless. They thought intimidation was enough to break me. What they didn't know was that I had been in tighter spots before, and training doesn't leave you when you need it most. Training isn't a list of moves, it's a mindset. With my weight shifted forward, I compacted my stance and stayed small. The first man came too close, ready to gloat, and that's when I snapped my hips, unbalanced him, and pulled him off his feet using the very cuffs they thought would restrain me. He crashed into my toolbox with a clatter that echoed through the garage. Surprise is a weapon most people forget, and in that moment I had it. Another rushed at me, but I hooked his leg, toppled him to the floor, and rolled with him across the oil-stained concrete using every surface as leverage. My strikes weren't pretty. They were short, brutal, efficient, knee into thigh, elbow across collarbone, palm into jaw, ugly close-range moves that turned their confidence into panic. The cuffs hurt, biting into my wrists, but pain is just information and I used it to fuel precision. Two of them were down, one scrambling to recover while the leader barked in frustration, trying to reassert control. That's when the noise outside shifted. A woman's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and panicked. "I've called the cops!" Neighbors were gathering, flashlights sweeping across the street, phones recording as figures in black vests loitered in my garage. The leader swore under his breath, his eyes darting to the door. He lunged at me, desperate to finish this before real law enforcement arrived, but he made the mistake of underestimating a man who knew how to use momentum. My elbow snapped back into his chin, sending him sprawling. For the first time, the smirks vanished. Fear took their place. I shifted my balance, pulled my wallet free with my chin, fumbled it open, and let the porch light glint off the badge inside. My voice was low but steady when I spoke. "I'm a U.S. Marshal. You're under arrest for impersonating an officer and burglary. Stay where you are." The silence in the garage was electric. Their arrogance froze into disbelief. Their postures stiffened, and for once they had no script to follow. They weren't HOA cops anymore. They were criminals caught in the act. The moment the sirens wailed closer, the entire energy shifted. Those fake HOA cops who thought they could play enforcers suddenly looked like scared kids caught stealing candy. My wrists still burned from the cuffs digging in, but I stood tall, my badge glinting in the porch light, neighbors filming from the street, and the sound of real deputies rolling up fast. When the patrol cars pulled into Cedar Ridge, red and blue lights splashing across the houses, the imposters froze. The lead deputy stepped out, hand on his holster, scanning the scene in seconds. I locked eyes with him, steady and calm, and said the words that changed everything. "U.S. Marshal, on duty." "These men broke into my home, cuffed me, and claimed fake authority." He moved fast. took my credentials, thumbed the badge, and his tone snapped like a whip. "Get those restraints off him. Now!" One officer rushed forward, key in hand, and within seconds the metal clicked open, blood rushing back into my hands, pins and needles shooting up my arms. I flexed my fingers, nodded once, and pointed at the 4 men lined up against my garage wall, trying to stammer excuses. The deputies wasted no time. Real cuffs clicked around their wrists, tighter and far less forgiving. Their fake badges and binders were seized, one deputy muttering, "These aren't bylaws, these are invoices." Phones were pulled from pockets, and that's where the real bomb dropped. Message threads lit up. Orders written in black and white straight from Patricia Moreland herself. Texts that read, "Make sure he's humiliated. Cuff him if you have to. He won't fight back if you look official." Another, "Once he's dealt with, the rest will pay their fines quietly." My neighbors gasped when they heard the deputies read them aloud, the truth spilling into the night for everyone to witness. Patricia was brought in hours later, her voice dripping with arrogance as she insisted, "They acted alone. The HOA never sanctioned this." But when deputies slid her phone across the table showing her own messages glowing back at her, color drained from her face. She tried to backpedal, claiming the texts weren't hers, but the digital trail didn't lie. Alongside those messages were receipts of fake citations, inflated lawn fines, parking violations issued on public streets, even a so-called security fee that was never deposited anywhere legitimate. The scheme was exposed in full daylight. Residents who had been silent finally stepped forward, clutching receipts they had paid under threat of liens. Hundreds, even thousands of dollars stolen under the false banner of HOA authority. The charges stacked higher than she could argue. Wire fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, impersonation, false imprisonment, burglary. The 4 men who cuffed me faced their own set. Assault, impersonating an officer, unlawful restraint. In federal court, the judge didn't waste time cutting through her excuses. His words echoed across the chamber. "An HOA is not a government. You are not law enforcement. You abused trust, threatened residents, and endangered a federal officer in his own home. This was greed wrapped in intimidation." The sentences hit like hammer blows. Patricia, 7 years in state prison, $350,000 in restitution, and barred for life from serving on any neighborhood board. Her hired muscle each pled guilty to felonies, walked out with permanent records, probation, and heavy fines that would follow them for years. Cedar Ridge's HOA was dissolved entirely, a receivership appointed to clean up the wreckage. The neighborhood that once trembled at letters and bogus fines finally breathed again, free from the chokehold of Patricia's manufactured authority. As for me, I stood in that courtroom with my wrists still scarred from the cuffs, remembering the night she tried to make me a prisoner in my own garage. They thought they had me cornered. They thought a fake vest and a pair of handcuffs would make me submit. But the truth is simple. They didn't just underestimate me, they underestimated justice. Patricia and her crew signed their own sentences the moment they stepped into my garage. That night wasn't about control. It was about exposure. And once exposed, their empire crumbled faster than they could imagine. The neighborhood didn't just win back peace, it won back freedom. And the message was clear. When corruption dresses itself in fake authority, it only takes one light, one badge, and one refusal to back down to burn the whole scam to the ground.